Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Kirsty, and I work on our membership team. And this evening, we are joined by Rosemary Mulholland, our head of nature recovery, and she's going to tell us all about how we can create a butterfly-friendly garden. So before we start the talk, I just want to run through a couple of housekeeping points. So the talk will last for approximately 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time at the end for some questions. The talk is being recorded and we will share it with everyone afterwards. So if you do miss anything, you can watch it back. If you don't want to appear on the recording, just keep your video switched off. And also if you're maybe still finishing your dinner, that would be great. We're going to keep everyone muted throughout the talk just to stop any distractions. But if you do have any issues with sound, just pop it in the chat and we'll obviously pick that up. And if you want to use the chat facility to ask any questions, you can do that, but please avoid any running commentary as it can be a wee bit distracting to speakers and other people trying to listen. There will be an opportunity at the end to come off mute if you did want to ask Rosemary a question directly. We've tested the sound quality, so fingers crossed we're not going to have any technical issues. But as I said, if you do come across something with your sound, pop it in the chat and I'll keep an eye. And if there's something we can fix, we will do our best to do that. And finally, at the end of the talk, we're going to send everyone a short feedback form, and we'd be really grateful if you could take the time to complete that, as it really helps us to make these events better going forward. So keep an eye out in your email inbox for that. I'm just going to admit a couple more people, and then I think we're ready to hand over to Rosemary. Can everyone see that slide okay? Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Yep. So Rosemary, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kirsty. Can everyone hear me okay? Give me the thumbs up, somebody. Yep. Thanks, Barbara. I can see your thumb up. So, now I need to move forward. Now the slides aren't moving forward for me, Kirsty.
Oh no.
Let's see.
Did you try just
Tried the, yeah, I mean, I moved forward that one, so.
Just going to admit someone else while we're doing that. Unless you want to stop sharing briefly and maybe reshare, see if that does anything.
Yeah, sorry, folks. It was working.
We just jinxed it because we were all prepared.
Can you see the full screen there, or?
It's still on sort of the
Right, that's it now.
the pre-screen, yeah.
Is
Yep,
that
that's
okay
it now.
now? Yeah, great. So thanks everybody for joining. I think this is a really good time to be doing this particular topic, because I don't know about you, but I was out and about today, and the sun was shining and there was lots of bees about, and a friend of mine messaged me before I started to say that she had a speckled wood in her garden already. So I haven't seen any butterflies yet, but it's a good time to be getting ready for them. So I'm just going to take you through, a very quick run through the species here that we would see in Northern Ireland, a little bit about how they're doing and what their needs are. So it'll not just be about pollinator plants. It'll also be a quick look at all the different things that butterflies need us to help them with. So yeah, we've got normally 26 species here. It varies a bit. Sometimes different ones come in and leave again. So the ones that are underlined here in the list are the ones that you would expect to see in your garden. Starting probably the one at the top is the orange tip, and it's usually the first one that you see. Although Jill did see a speckled wood. Large white another quite common butterfly. Small white here isn't actually very common at all. I haven't seen one for a while. Green veined white, another one of the whites. The whites can be a wee bit difficult because they're all white. So you have to get a good look at them to see the little markings on them. Cryptic wood white is Northern Ireland's special butterfly, which is only found here and in sort of parts of, Eastern Europe, and into Asia. But it's not normally a butterfly that you would see in your garden. You might be lucky enough if you do live in the right area where they are. The peacock and the small tortoiseshell, we all know those. Those would be the really sort of typical garden butterflies that you would see a wee bit later on. Red Admiral and Painted Lady, they are migrants, so they don't survive here all year round. They just fly in and stay for a bit, but they don't make it through the winter. And in fact, the Painted Lady migrates back. So the Red Admiral's coming from continental Europe, and the Painted Lady's coming from North Africa. So for a little insect, they can certainly shift on quite a long way. Then we've got, I've left the comma out, I'm going to talk about it in a moment. Um, the dark green and the silver wash fritillaries are lovely, really big butterflies, big orange, flashy looking butterflies. And then the marsh fritillary is often hailed as Europe's rarest butterfly. And we do have them here in Northern Ireland. So if you got one of those in your garden, you'd be doing very well. And you'd probably be living down in Fermanagh or somewhere to get that. Then we've got the browns, the ringlet and the meadow brown are often seen in gardens, and the speckled wood. The grayling, not so much so. You'll see those in the moorns, at Murlock and places like that, and over in Fermanagh. Large heath is a bog species, so you get those out in the peatlands. Small heath and dingy skipper are species-rich grassland species. Common blue, you might get those in your garden. I haven't had one yet, but I'm not really living in the right area. And then we've got the holly blue, which is on the increase. Small blue is very rare. It's only found in Northern Ireland, it's very rare. It's only found in one site in County Fermanagh. Purple hairstreak lives in woodland at the top of oak trees. Green hairstreak's another bog species. And then the wee small copper, my favourite butterfly, is another wee garden one. So the comma is a new arrival, and it's been seen now in a couple of counties and is on the increase across Britain. It's climate change is actually suiting the comma, which is why it's moving north and coming to a garden near you. So look out for that one. So then, how are our butterflies doing? Well, I'm sure most of you will have noticed last year was just the worst year ever, I think. Certainly the worst since records began. We had the cold spring, there was a lot of rain, it was windy, the butterflies just couldn't seem to get out on the wing at all. So that was really caused by the weather, but overall butterflies are declining, and there's been an 80% decline since the 1970s, with the specialist species faring the worst. So those species that live in particular habitats and are not sort of widespread are the ones that have declined most. And there's the comma, a 203% increase between the 1970s and 2019. And it's now here in Northern Ireland. So at least that's one that's doing quite well. So then, what do they need? I think certainly when I was a teenager and starting to take an interest in butterflies, the two things that you really needed was a buddleia bush and a patch of nettles. And that seemed to be everything that was said about attracting butterflies. Um, but they need their whole life cycle catered for. So it's not just good enough to give them a bit of nectar in your garden. You're going to try to provide them with everything they need through their whole life. And butterflies do have different stages in their life cycle. So here on the left, you can see the egg stage. So I don't know if you can see the little orangey yellow egg just at the base of the flower there. And that is an orange tip egg. So it lays its eggs on things like garlic mustard and lady's smock, always on crucifers. So a cruciferous plant is a plant sort of in the brassica or the cabbage family. They usually, well, I think they all have four petals. So it's like a cross shape, which is where the name comes from, like crucifix. And the orange tip is lettuce egg there. But the wee caterpillar that hatches out of that, the first thing it does is it go and looks for any other eggs that might be in the plant. Because the part of the plant that it eats is the seed pods. So there's not that much seed pods on a single lady smock plant. So it doesn't want to share it with anybody. So it'll go and look, and if it finds another egg, it eats the egg. So gets a wee bit of extra protein there, and then it can start to feed itself. So they need a food plant for the caterpillars. The next stage then, once the caterpillars have fed and have grown and gone through the different stages, they will turn into a chrysalis or a pupa. And there's one in the middle there. That's a large white chrysalis. Very vulnerable stage for a butterfly. It's basically like, if you can imagine, you climb into a sleeping bag, you hide yourself away, you go to sleep, and you emerge as something completely different. But during that stage, they've really got no protection apart from camouflage. Inside, there's a miraculous thing going on where basically the caterpillar turns into like soup, and all the cells rearrange themselves into a butterfly. So it is quite an amazing process that goes on. So imagine now you've got through the pupation stage, and the next thing you need is some nectar for energy. So that's when you're going to be looking for your flowers. So here's a wee orange tip male. It's only the males that have the orange tips. Females are just white with a nice mottled underwing, and it has found a dandelion. So, yeah, this time of year, I've seen quite a few dandelions starting to appear, and they're probably the best early spring plant for butterflies. So, if you can tolerate dandelions in your garden, that's great. If you don't really want them, you can always put them in a pot, and then once the flower goes over, you can pull the seeds off so that you're not going to have more dandelions than you actually want. But they are a great plant. And then for some of the butterflies, some just go from the adult, then they lay the eggs and then they die, but some of them actually hibernate. So here we have a small tortoiseshell hibernating, probably in somebody's garden shed. In the wild, if they can't find a shed, they'll be in a cave or in holes in trees. So that's another stage that some of them have. And there's some interesting research has been done recently on how camouflage butterfly or how hibernating butterflies survive. So I'll tell you a wee bit about that. So the thing then to start off with that they need is the food plant. And some of them aren't that fussy, but some of them need a very particular plant to lay their eggs on. If you know a wee bit about butterflies and moths, you will see that these are not actually butterfly caterpillars. The big humongous one on the left there is a puss moth caterpillar. It's quite an amazing looking thing. And the wee caterpillar also in the same leaf is actually a sawfly larvae. So it's not a butterfly or moth at all, it's a sawfly. And sometimes you can get mixed up in them. Can be hard to tell the difference. But if you look at the puss moth, the big fat one, you'll see at the front, so the front end of it is at the bottom. You can see his wee head there, and you'll see there are like you can see three legs, and then there'll be three on the other side. So it's an insect, so it has six legs. And then at the back, it's got like these big sucker sort of feet, and those are known as prolegs. So for butterflies, they'll have four or five pair of prolegs. But if you look at the wee sawfly, I think that one's probably got about nine pair of prolegs. So that's how you can tell the difference. It's just a wee tip for you if you're looking out for them. The ones on the right are common Quaker moth caterpillars, which I actually reared these. Got them in the moth trap, the female laid eggs in the moth trap. And I thought, oh dear, that's an awful waste. So I brushed them off and put them in a wee aquarium with no water in it, of course, just a few leaves. And here did in the hatch, and the caterpillars were munching away at all the different leaves. So there's birch leaves and oak leaves. And then I thought, right, I'm going to let them go here. I'm going to put them outside back onto a tree. And then I began to realize just how difficult it is for caterpillars. There was a bird box in one of the trees, so I thought, well, that's not going to work for them because the blue tit will eat them all. Um, and if I put them on the other tree, the grass underneath that tree always gets cut. So when they drop off to pupate, I'm going to chop them up. So I ended up keeping them in the aquarium until they pupated and came out the next spring. So it was a nice, wee happy ending to that one. And then we've got what we call the Venesids. So you've got the peacock, comma, small tortoiseshell, and red admiral. And they are the nettle feeders. So it was right to say that nettles are good for butterflies, but some research has been done recently to see if you have nettles in your garden, does it increase the number of butterflies in your garden? And it actually doesn't. So if you really don't want nettles in your garden, that's okay. It's a common enough plant in the countryside for them to find a wee patch to lay their eggs on. If you do want to keep some nettles in the garden for butterflies, they need to be in the sun. They won't lay their eggs on shady nettles, so they need to be in a nice sunny spot. So on the left, they're looking like a night sky with spikes is the peacock, beautifully patterned with a little starry pattern on it. In the middle, then we've got the comma, which that's not a very good photograph. I'll show you a better one later. And then the small tortoise shell there, I think that one is. You can see some poop there as well on the nettle leaves. So caterpillars do poop quite a lot because they're eating all that plant material, and it has to go somewhere. Then we've got the white butterflies. So they like to eat plants from the crucifer family, as we said already. So that's your cabbages. So sometimes in the past they got the nickname cabbage whites, which applied to the small white and the large white, but we don't really call them that anymore. But they do like things like garlic mustard, sweet rocket, and they will also eat nasturtium. So I plant nasturtium seeds every year in the garden, especially for the large whites and occasionally the small whites if they do find their way there. So that's a green veined white on the left with a little yellow dots on it. And then that's a large white is munching on the nasturtium. So they can really demolish the nasturtium. I had some in my window box one year and they were eating away at the nasturtiums, and then some wasps found them. So wasps will actually predate on caterpillars. So the wasps come down and carry the caterpillars away back to their nest to eat them. So that's what happened to them. And then the fritillaries now. As I said, you're not going to get these in your garden, but I just thought you might be interested to see what they eat. So we've got the dark green and the silver wash fritillaries will eat violets. So they're like a woodland or woodland edge species. And then there's the wee young marsh fritillary, the really rare butterfly. And they do this thing where they get together in a wee bunch, um, sort of July, August time, September, and then again in the spring, early springtime. And they come out and they sit in a nice little warm patch and all get together. And because they're black, if there's any sunshine, it really warms them up. It sort of attracts the heat. And that's what they do to get a wee bit of energy. And they feed on devil's bit scabious, which is also known as blue button, which is a beautiful plant. So that's the wee marsh fritz. And then we've got all the brown butterflies, so the ringlet, meadow brown, grayling, small heath, large heath. They feed on grasses of different kinds. So you don't often think of grasses as being a wildflower or something that the butterflies need, but there's quite a few species do depend on it. And the even on the bogs, the large heath, it feeds on cotton grass. So if you have a garden, um, they've proven now that butterfly conservation has done a lot of research into this and discovered that one of the best things you can do for increasing both numbers of butterflies in your garden and variety is by leaving some long grass. It's nearly one of the best things that you can do. So yeah, if you can find a wee patch somewhere and just let it grow and cut it once a year. That's really good for those particular species of butterfly. As I said, they looked at nettles. They found that growing nettles in the garden for butterflies didn't really make much of a difference. The other thing that they looked at was ivy. So if you've got some ivy, wild ivy in your garden, is that good for butterflies? And it made a slight difference. But ivy is also great for bees and hoverflies as well. So it is one of the better plants to have. But yeah, get some sort of native wild grasses if you can, and easy enough to find the seeds. You just go out for a walk and pick some off what's growing and bring them back home. And then we've got two species of plant that the holly blue depends on. So in the springtime, the holly blue overwinters as a chrysalis. So um, not all butterflies are chrysalis overwinter. There 12 of or 26 overwinter as a caterpillar, 7 overwinter as a chrysalis. The speckled wood can do either, so it's sort of just depending on the weather conditions. 3 of them hibernate, and then 2 of them, the painted lady and the red admiral, either die or the painted lady migrates back to Europe again. But the holly blue emerges from its chrysalis in spring and off it goes in search of holly. So it lays its eggs on the buds of the holly tree and then they hatch out and the caterpillars grow and pupate and they then emerge from pupation later on in the summer. So that's the second brood. So they've got 2 broods per year, and that brood lays its eggs on ivy. So it needs the 2 different plants to keep the 2 broods going. So it's an interesting wee butterfly. Holly blue, when I was growing up, if you saw holly blue, it was like you nearly rang the Belfast Telegraph to come out and do a story on it. It was really, really rare. But now they're really increased and they're doing quite well. And you'll see them all over the countryside. Lovely wee butterfly. So yeah, some of the other important plants that we can grow in our garden. A lot of them are native plants, so wild plants, but you can also grow cultivated plants as well, which are great for nectar. Bird's foot trefoil is one of our wildflowers. lovely little yellow and orange flower, sometimes called bacon and eggs because it's yellow as in egg yolk, and then underneath it's red like a slice of bacon. So you need to use your imagination with that one. But it's a great plant to grow in your lawn if you want to leave your lawn growing a wee bit longer. It will bring in bees as well. So dingy skipper lays its eggs on the bird's foot trefoil, and the common blue does as well. And then sheep sorrel and common sorrel for the small copper, which is my favorite little butterfly. It's just like a little orange jewel. This is sheep sorrel on the right here. And can you see there's something going strange with the leaves? Some of the leaves are green, some of them are much paler color. And that's because these leaves have got a little larvae, a little grub inside them. If you look at the sort of top right leaf, can you see a little grub just inside the blotch? And that's a little fly larvae that feeds on sheep sorrel. So these little mines and blotches, sometimes it's moths, but quite often it's flies. There's actually one on the bottom left as well. So they've got to it before the small copper. So then on to some of the nectar plants. So the butterflies laid its eggs. It has turned into a caterpillar. The caterpillar has been eating the plant. It's pupated, and then nectar is the next stage in this. So on the left here, we have a lovely female large white butterfly, and she's feeding on salvia. And salvia is a really fantastic plant for butterflies, one of the best. This is just a cultivated variety, um, and it blooms for ages as well. So it's lovely, and you always get a nice photograph with the butterfly against the blue. And then on the right, we've got a red admiral, so one of the migrant ones we get, and it's on buddleia, so the good old butterfly bush that everybody knows and loves, unless you are in an area where it's become invasive. So if you do sort of live out in the countryside and you don't want the buddleia to be spreading all over the place, good idea is just to chop off the old flower heads before they go to seed, because it can be a very invasive plant as well, especially if it's next to a special habitat. So yeah, just to show you some of the wildflowers that are especially good. We've got tufted vetch on the left, and these are beautiful. They're wildflowers. But you would look at home in any garden. And I was growing tufted vetch with Marguerite daisies, and they looked absolutely fantastic. And everybody's saying, "Oh, what's that lovely blue flower? Oh, that's tufted vetch. It's a wild plant." Then on the top there, we've got red clover and black medic. These were just growing on an old brownfield site near me. And just, it was full of butterflies. Not this year though, or last year because of the bad weather though. On the right is common vetch, which isn't just so common. And then down in the bottom there, that's meadow vetchling with a common blue feeding on it. So the clovers, the vetches, the trefoils are all great for butterflies, both for a food plant for the caterpillar and for nectar. So if you can have some of those in your garden, that'd be really, really useful. Now, if there's any farmers here, you'll roll your eyes at this one because this is ragwort, and ragwort is classed as a noxious weed along with thistle, which is also a great plant for butterflies. But if you can find a little space in your garden for a ragwort plant, it really is one of the best plants for pollinators. You can even have it in a pot, and once it blooms and the blooms die away, throw it out or cut the flowers off it so that it doesn't go to seed. It's a biennial, so it grows, the leaves grow in the first year, and then in the second year it blooms, and then it dies. So it's a 2-year process. So in the middle here, we've got a painted lady all the way from North Africa, which is visited the filling station here to get topped up with nectar. And then on the right, we've got a small copper. And you can see its big long tongue probing down into the flower to get the nectar. Over on the left, these aren't butterfly caterpillars, these are cinnabar moth caterpillars. And they're little stripy, black and yellow stripy caterpillars that eat the ragwort. So they're the farmer's friend. Because of course ragwort is poisonous to livestock. So they won't touch it if it's green and it's growing. Cattle and horses will ignore it and graze around it. But if it's dead and dried and maybe gets baled up in hay or silage, that's when it can be toxic. And I think 5 kilos of ragwort can kill a cow, so it is a pretty nasty plant for ragwort or for livestock, but great for butterflies and moths. Because it is toxic, the wee caterpillars there that are feeding on it, they eat the toxins and it makes them taste really horrible. So if a bird flies down and it doesn't know that black and yellow mean warning, and it eats one, it'll be sick, and then it'll know not to eat anymore. So it's a good defense mechanism for them. So that's our ragwort. And if you want to come and pull some ragwort on Slieve na Cloy at our nature reserve in the summertime, you'd be most welcome because we do try and keep it under control. And then this is one of my favorite garden plants. Its Latin name is Hesperus matrinalis, and it's got so many common names. It's known as Dame's Violet, Sweet Rocket, Sweet Jane. It's probably got about another 10 names, depending on where you come from. Again, it's in the crucifer family. You can see the 4 petals in the shape of a cross. It's a beautiful scent. It blooms all summer. It will self-seed, but it doesn't make a nuisance of itself. And it's great for butterflies and bees. And in the middle there is a very special moth, which is a narrow-bordered bee hawk moth. So it's obviously got a narrow border. It looks like a bee, but it's a hawk moth. So it actually feeds while it's flying. So you can see well, you can't even see the wings, are just a blur, and the tongue is going down into the flower to collect the nectar. And then over on the top left hand side, if you can just make out this, it's not a great photograph because it was moving so fast. I couldn't get a good photo of it, but that's a little bee fly. So it is in the fly family, but it looks like a wee fuzzy bee. It's the cutest wee thing you ever saw, with big black eyes and this cuddly little body. But the larvae of them do feed on, I think it's maybe green fly and things like that. So and it also feeds on solitary bee larvae as well. So it may look cuddly, but it's a wee bit of a predator. So that's your sweet rocket, lovely plant. And then remember the trees as well, because trees also produce pollen and nectar. One good early one is the willow, which is great for bees and hoverflies. And it's a real lifesaver when insects are coming out of hibernation and there's not a lot else around. So if you can make space for goat willow or something like that, it's brilliant. And then on the right, we've got ivy. And ivy is probably one of the best wildlife plants that you can have because it blooms in the autumn. It's like the opposite of everything else. So it's blooming in the autumn and then it produces the berries in spring when there's no other berries or nuts to eat. So I have ivy in my garden and the wood pigeons are just stuffing themselves with it at the minute. eating all the berries. But it's great for butterflies as well when it's in bloom. Oh, sorry, rid of that. And then we've got sedum spectabile, which is another garden plant that blooms in summer and is absolutely fantastic for especially small tortoiseshells. So you can see on the left there was loads. There was quite a lot of this plant, and there was probably about 24 butterflies on it. And there's a wee close up of the small tortoiseshell. And it's a nice looking plant as well to have in your garden. Lavender. So those of you who are keen gardeners will see that there's more than just lavender in this photograph. The big tall blue one at the front is Viper's bugloss, which is a wild plant. Fantastic color, great for pollinators. And then just behind it is lavender. So a survey was done by oh, I'll get you his name. It was the University of Sussex, and it was researched by Michael Garbuzov, who was looking at different varieties of lavender and which attracted the most pollinators. So Lavandula intermedia was the best, and gross blue um, had the most pollinators. Grosso was also good, and the one that attracted the fewest number was rosea, which is the pink coloured lavender. So if you can get the intermedia, that would be the best one. And of course, all the herbs are good for butterflies, moths, and bees as well. So herb garden's brilliant. In the background there too, you can see some pink flowers, and that is mallow, which is great too. And the little sort of creamy coloured round-headed things are chives, which have faded. You know, the flowers are over, but chives are also very good. And we can eat them as well. So just some of the other nectar plants. Early spring, this is pulmonaria or lungwort on the right here. And this photograph was taken today. So it's in bloom. Lovely wee plant to have in springtime. Other ones are the aubracia, bugle, grape hyacinth, which are in bloom now also. Heather, fantastic. And you can get heather nearly that's blooming all year round, depending on what variety you get. So, you know, you can have them coming into bloom as the year goes on. Honesty is lovely as well. Primrose, now that's our native primrose, the Primula vulgaris, and Sweet William, which is another nicely scented plant. Then we go into sort of late spring and early summer. Lots of choice here. You've got the alliums, so you know the onion family, chives as well, campanula, bellflower, comfrey is good, marigolds, granny's bonnet, the aquilegia or columbine, honeysuckle. Honeysuckle is great because it puts out a lovely scent in the evening, and that's great for moths that are flying during the night. Evening primrose is another one, and night scented stalk. Those are all great for moths. Red campion is a great plant which will grow out in the sun or it'll grow in the woodland. And roses. So single flowered varieties, if you know, a lot of these plants come as double flowers, but this means that the butterflies and bees can't access the pollen or access the nectar so easily. So if you go for the single ones where you can see you know, the inside of the flower as well. Wallflowers, great, all different kinds of wallflower, which are also crucifers and mallow. Things like busy lizzies, petunias, and pansies don't tend to be so good. So just be careful which ones that you're going for. Um, the plant on the right there, that's Viper's bug loss growing up through fennel, which just did that itself, and I just thought it was a lovely combination of colours. So as the year goes on, almost there's more flowers for the butterflies to choose from. So you've got your buddleia. Um, Buddleia is fantastic, but yeah, just don't let it escape into a nature reserve or a natural habitat because it can sort of take over. Candy tuft cardoon. Cardoons are fabulous. They're like big, massive thistle heads, about the size of a tennis ball. Catmint, another herb, uh, cornflowers, cosmos, fennel here is great too. Um, Sorry, that says glove thistle. It's supposed to be globe thistle. Hebes, agrimony, hyssop, knapweed, oreganum. So all the herbs again are still blooming into the late summer and autumn. Michaelmas daisies. So make sure you get the ones that are open, not the wee sort of tight, sort of double-headed ones. Mint, phlox, and pot marigold. So loads to choose from. A lot of them are the old-fashioned sort of cottage garden plants, and most of them are dual purpose. So you could use them also for cooking or for seasoning your food. Don't use the ragwort for that though, it wouldn't be a good idea. And then pupation. Just talk very briefly about this. Most of us won't have that sort of a habitat in our gardens unless you're right out in the countryside, you're a very big garden. But it's just to show you the sort of things that butterflies will be looking for, or the caterpillars will look for pupation. So long grass, undisturbed, scrubby vegetation, somewhere where they can hide. Some of them go right down onto the ground, into the leaf litter to pupate. Others will attach themselves to a stem or a twig or even a blade of grass. So go easy on the strimmer. Just remember that if you leave a little wild place for them to pupate, it means that they can complete their life cycle. There's no point in giving them all these lovely flowers and maybe a food plant if you're just then clearing everywhere up at the end of the summer or end of the autumn, because then you're going to expose them when they're trying to pupate. So just a little wildness goes a long way for butterflies. And then hibernation. So we've got these three species here that hibernate. So there's the comma. So that's the one you want to be looking out for. It's quite a small butterfly. It looks a wee bit like a small tortoiseshell. It's had the edges of its wings all tattered, but that's just the shape that they are. And the reason for that will become clear. And then here on the right, we've got a beautiful peacock and a small tortoiseshell that actually fancied the peacock and was flying around after it and trying to mate with it. But you can see how different in size they are. So it's a good indicator of how to tell which one's which. So these butterflies will go into, as I said, a hole in a tree, into a cave, or into your shed. Sometimes they come into the house. And then when the heat goes on in the autumn, the next thing they're out flying about because they think it's spring. But researchers did it was Olafsson et al. Did some research into camouflage in hibernating butterflies. So they put the butterflies into a big cage with some blue tits. But they let the butterflies sort of become dormant first of all, and then they put the blue tits in. So the blue tits went on the search for food. The commas were so well camouflaged that the blue tits only found 75% of them. So 75% were eaten, 25% survived due to their good camouflage. They only relied on camouflage, they didn't do anything else. The small tortoiseshell, if they're disturbed when they're hibernating, they flick their wings open sort of once or twice and close them again. Uh, it didn't put the blue tits off. So 90% of the small tortoise shells were eaten. But the peacock had a 100% survival rate from the blue tits because what it does is it keeps flicking open its wings and it'll leave them open and then it'll close them and open them again. And it looks like an owl. So if you look at the eyes on its wings there, it does look quite like an owl, especially the eyes on the hind wing. You just think they were looking at you. And it can also rub its wings together to make like a rasping sound, which sounds a wee bit like owls hissing. So the blue tits went, hey, I'm not going to tackle this. Mice are put off as well because mice, even though it's dark, they can hear the sound, so that frightens them away. And they even tried this with domestic chickens. As you know, domestic chickens will tackle anything, but they wouldn't tackle the peacock butterflies. So they're the masters of hibernation. That was quite an interesting survey. And that's one of them there. Absolutely beautiful butterfly. Um, Another thing that you can do is put out some stones in a sunny spot. So if you've got a flower bed that's in the sun, you can put out a couple of old bricks or a couple of stones, because the butterflies like to bask on them. They can heat up, especially brick, heats up in the sunshine, and the butterflies will sit on it and open their wings and, get the rays of the sun to help them retain their energy a bit more. That's a painted lady on a beach down in County Cork. And finally, so I'm sorry, I don't like putting too much writing on slides, but there's a lot to cram in here. So in Ireland, we've got 2 million gardens. So that's 359,000 acres of land. So that's bigger than any of our national parks. In the UK, the total area of private gardens is around 10 million acres. So huge amounts of land here. So your garden is like your own nature reserve. And even a window box with great plants can make a difference to a butterfly. So you may not change the world for all the butterflies, but you could make a world of a difference for one butterfly. And at the end of the day, isn't that a great thing that we can do? I used to live in a block of flats. I had a window box, and attached to the window box, I had a nest box. So I had a great tit nesting in the window box, in the nest box, and I had nectar plants in the window box, and I had butterflies coming and going. So even if you've only got one planter, it can actually make a big difference. The RHS Greening Great Britain report said that 50% of urban green space is private gardens. And look at this for a fact. In 2005, 7% of gardens in Britain were paved, but by 2015, this had risen to almost 30%. So that's crazy. Crazy loss of, gardens and green space. Everybody wants something handy and they're paving it over. Remember, use your peat feed compost because there's no point in buying plants to attract butterflies when you're killing off the habitat for butterflies like the large heath and the green hairstreak. Remember not to use pesticides if you can help it, because these will also kill butterflies and moths. And then if you want to take it a step further, there's loads of opportunities to get involved in citizen science projects like Butterfly Conservation's Garden Bird Survey, or the Big Butterfly Count. And it's got to be one of the nicest things to do. You have to do it on a nice, warm, sunny day. You go and sit outside in the garden for 15 minutes with your cup of tea or coffee, and you count the butterflies you see in 15 minutes. And this year, it's from the 18th of July to the 10th of August. You can do it in your garden, you can do it in your local park, you can do it out in the countryside, anywhere really is where there's something for butterflies to come to. You can contribute to that. And if your neighbors don't like your style, you could put up a sign. So, I'm gardening for butterflies, or um, our neighbors were all going. Actually, we moved into the house just over a year ago, and our neighbors were coming along and saying, would you like us to lend you our lawnmower? Has your lawnmower broken down? And we're going, no, 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 we're trying to garden for butterflies. So that was fine. Then once they knew what we were up to, they were happy enough. Um, and there are loads of resources. So I've just skipped through some of the things you can do, but the All Ireland Pollinator Plan is online. It's got, information for gardeners, for councils, for landowners. Um, Butterfly Conservation also has great resources online, and on our Ulster Wildlife website, you can check out Let Nature In section as well, which has got more advice on that. And most important, enjoy it. It's there. Gardens are lovely. I've always enjoyed gardening, but it's so much better when you're sharing it with nature because there's so much more to see. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to hand over to Kirsty, and then we can do some questions as well, Kirsty.
Thanks so much, Rosemary. I definitely have a shopping list of seeds and things that I want to buy. So thank you so much for sharing all that. We're just going to take some questions. So I'll go through the chat, and then if anyone wants to come off mute and ask Rosemary a question directly at the end, you can do that. So just going through the chat. Alistair had asked if we could zoom in the dark green fritillaries. Sorry we weren't able to do that at the time, Alistair, but if there's something specific that you wanted to know about them, ask away, or we could maybe arrange to share the image with you at a later point. Irina has asked, do browns eat the grass blades or the seeds or both?
That's a really good question. I think they'll eat both. Um, and some moths actually will actually eat the roots of grass as well. So yeah. As far as I know, any part of the grass is edible to them. And different species of butterfly will focus on different species of grass as well. So they don't all eat all of them. Some of them will have a speciality.
That's great. And Alistair has asked, would the pea family include sweet peas?
Um, yes, but you're probably better going for the wild varieties. But sweet pea's good as well. But maybe you don't want your sweet pea getting eaten. So you can but bees will come to sweet pea as well. So yeah, for nectaring, it's good. Yeah.
Great. And then Kath,
Peas are very full of protein. You see, if you're eating peas, they're very protein rich. So the whole pea family is a very high protein plant. So that's why they really like to use it.
good to know. And then Catherine has asked if you have any advice on how to tackle slugs while not tearing butterflies and caterpillars.
Yes, that's a good question. I have I would be inclined to grow things that slugs aren't really that attracted to. Um, but that's me. If you like hostas, slugs are really going to go for them. They just seem to make a beeline for hostas. You can try beer traps, which so you can put a little bit of beer into a container you can actually buy these. So the slug quite fancies the beer, and then it goes in and gets drunk and it drowns in the beer. Um, or you can use like the rind of an orange, so like the skin of an orange, and place it in the flower beds with the open bit down, and then we'll go in underneath that, and then you can check them the next morning, and then throw them in the bin or dispose of them whatever way um you have the stomach for. But I would be sort of inclined to try and grow things that slugs won't eat. If they're after your lettuces and things like that, you can try things like eggshells are supposed to work, or grit or whatever. But try and stay away from slug pellets because they can also really affect hedgehogs. So hedgehogs eat slugs. So if they come along to this sort of disabled slug that's been half poisoned and they eat it, the toxins can build up in their system. So yeah, slug pellets aren't so good. Good luck.
Uh, and then Sarah has asked, will butterflies use bug boxes with the slotted sections?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never seen a butterfly using them, but I imagine they could do. It would need to be in the shade because I take it you mean for hibernation. So it'll need to be somewhere that stays cold because if there's a bit of sun at all and it warms up, they'll emerge from hibernation and then maybe that night it'll be a frost and that'll be it. So they do need to stay in that sort of dormant state until springtime. But yeah, they might do. Yeah, if anybody's seen that, I'd be really interested to know about it.
Emily and Rachel have said, thank you. Very interesting and enjoyable talk. And then the next question is from Chris. Would you recommend planting anything in the spring for butterflies? I think you did kind of cover that on one of the slides, but if there's anything else you wanted to
Yeah.
add or recap on.
Yeah, if you don't mind dandelions, they're probably the best. You can also try, bluebells are good as well, for butterflies, but make sure you use the native bluebell, not the Spanish bluebell, because they can hybridize and then that causes problems, for the native bluebells. Um, yeah, that the little grape hyacinths are good. Even just on a nice day, go to a garden centre and walk around and see if there are any butterflies and see what they're using. Sometimes that's what I've done and go, oh, I didn't see that plant on the list ever. And it ended up being really, really good. So yeah, heather is good as well. And the tree pollen. So you've got the willows are great for early insects emerging from hibernation.
And next one is from Vivian. Any advice for deterring wasps from hurting butterflies and bees?
Um, Not really. I just think that's one of the natural processes that goes on. It we mightn't like what happens, and I'm sure the bees and the butterflies don't either, but it is just a natural process. It's like being out in safari in Africa. How do we stop the lions killing the deer and the antelopes? It's just one of those natural things that happens. And it also helps to prevent, you know, a sort of boom and bust of populations. Now, butterflies aren't doing so well, and that's down to things like climate change, habitat loss, um, intensification of agriculture, even light pollution can affect them. So they're already under pressure, and then we might feel, gosh, these wasps are putting on even more pressure. But overall, wasp predation um, won't really make a huge difference. It's more human factors that are causing the problems for them.
And then Mandy has asked if there is a good place in Northern Ireland to buy a native wildflower seed mix for butterfly supporting plants.
Yes, there's two places where you can buy native seeds. Eco Seeds is one, and True Harvest Seeds, and both of those organizations do sell native wildflower seed. And it's very important you get native, locally sourced wildflower seed, because you know it's local, it's been growing here a long time. If you get wildflower seed from the rest of the UK or from the continent, it's slightly different. So, yes, definitely going for the local stuff is really, really good.
That's great. I think that was the last question. If anyone else has a question you want to ask, either pop it in the chat or come off mute just before we finish up. No, I think that's maybe us. Um, Sarah just said, thank you, really informative, love the flower list. We'll definitely add some to the garden. Um, Lots of thank yous there, Rosemary. So
Great.
everyone seemed to
Thanks
enjoy it.
everybody for coming along, and let's hope that this year is better than last year. And then we can all make a difference in our gardens.
Yeah.
Looking
Thank
forward to
you.
seeing the first butterfly.
Thank you. Yeah.
And just before we go, everyone, you'll see on the screen upcoming events. So now that the brighter days are kind of nearly here, we'll be launching all our in-person events really soon. So if you're not already signed up to our e-news, please do. And also keep an eye out on our event section on the website, and also on our social media. We have lots of brilliant events coming up. You'll see the list there. So boat trips, art workshops, red kite tours, dawn chorus. So please keep a lookout for those. And then just a reminder that all of our winter talks are available exclusively to members on our YouTube channel. So if there's a talk that you've missed, or if there's one that you really enjoyed and want to go back through it, those will all be available to you. And I just want to say thank you to Rosemary for spending time with us this evening, telling us all about butterflies. Thank you to our members for your ongoing support. And if anyone's not a member, please consider joining our community. We're always trying to find new supporters to help bring nature back across Northern Ireland. So we'd love to have more people on board, and we hope to see you at an event again soon. So thanks so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and take care.